Well, it looks as though everybody is here, and so we will get started. And good afternoon. Welcome to this Perfect Practice webinar series. I'm your moderator, Nancy Roberts. Today we'll be taking a closer look at how your practice can survive and even thrive during system downtime events. Today's webinar is being hosted by the EHR Integration Services and EmedApps organizations, and you'll be hearing about both of them more in just a moment. And before I introduce you to today's panelists, we're just going to take a quick look at how this webinar will move along, what today's agenda looks like. Now, as you'll see, we're going to have a very busy hour. We'll be starting with an introduction to the Perfect Practice Alliance, what it is and how it can benefit you in your practice. And then we'll be introducing you to our primary presenters for today. And we'll be getting an explanation and a demonstration of how EmedApps can help your practice survive and even thrive during a downtime event. And then we'll end up the hour with your question and answer period. And about that, since you'll probably have questions, you'll just want to use your chat box, which is in your control section, to enter your questions, and do that at any time those questions occur to you during the session. We'll be able to take a look at them as we're going forward, and we'll answer all of them as we get to them, because this isn't a two-way audio, so you're just in listen mode. So if you want to ask us a question, please do that, or even jot it down and ask us when we get to that point of the seminar. So with that, we will get started, and I'll introduce you to today's speakers. First, we have Jamie Steck, who is a Business Development Manager from EHR Integration Services. Joe Cernick is the VP of Business Development at EmedApps, and Vikram Sheshadri, the VP of Product Development at EmedApps. And I will now turn this meeting over to Jamie. Jamie?
Nancy, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate you joining today, and Merry Christmas to you all. As we talk a little bit about the Perfect Practice Alliance, and we start our webinar here with EmedApps, we wanted to take just a minute and talk about why we created the Perfect Practice Alliance, what it is, and how we see that being beneficial to you and to the clinics, that we can offer a better solutions to your challenging technology needs here as the advancement of technology in healthcare continues to provide benefits and advances in better healthcare. It also requires a humanistic approach, because we as humans, our providers, our caregivers, we're all a part of that healthcare chain, and even though we have that technology to help advance that care, we still need that humanistic approach. So we like to say it's the human approach to healthcare technology. Nancy, if you would, please. And in that approach, the Perfect Practice Alliance initiative was created to deliver an enhanced and integrated suite of products and technology across the spectrum that you see on your screen right there. As the patient goes through that process into the provider and deals with the staff or the back office staff, those things that we can help with, and by making and forming the alliance, we wanted to help smooth that transition or offer better solutions in all aspects of this process, so that the perfect practice essentially could be better achieved. And we feel like we have teamed up with great partners in this process to help offer those types of solutions that would make this a better approach. And with us today is one of our great partners, EmedApps. And EmedApps is going to show us, again, these solutions, or a solution that, again, would help in that process, because unfortunately things happen, whether it's a cut internet line, or power goes out, or a storm of some kind, or any kind of other event that might take your system down. What happens to the providers, and how do they provide care to those patients, again, in this spectrum here, if they can't see that? And we've relied on that so heavily with our EHRs that we have no paper now. So again, is there a way, or can we create a way to have that backup occur. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Nancy, if you would please, I'd like to introduce Joe Cernick here, who will be talking just a little bit about EmedApps and how they came about and what they do, and then we'll jump right into the demonstration. Joe?
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate having the ability to share this technology with all of you and talk about how this solution may be able to help you guys. So EmedApps, we're a healthcare IT consulting company, and basically everything we do is revolving around making the health IT systems smarter, faster, and easier to use. And the one that we're going to talk about today is our business continuity solution. Just a little bit about our company, if we'll go to the next slide. We've been around since 1999, serving only the healthcare community and healthcare technology across the U.S. We've got headquarters in Chicago, offices in San Diego and Houston, and basically experts with everything in the healthcare IT space. And what we're going to talk about today is our Carefinity product, which is part of our care connectivity platform, which I'll talk about in just a second. So if we go to the next slide, I guess the question really is, why do we plan for this? What's so big a deal about this? And really, it's not a question of if, it's when you lose your system. And we used to say in the old days, if you lose your billing system or your scheduling system, it's a problem. But if your EHR goes down, it's a crisis. And that really is true. To talk about just a little bit about the genesis of this product and share some client experiences with you. How this came about is we had a client that was on actually the Practice Partner application, EHR application, and they were having an issue with a license key becoming corrupted. And it would take them about 4 hours for them to get connected with the vendor and get that new license sent down so that they can reestablish connections in their EHR. And so this is a client that has got about 7 locations and about 100 providers, and obviously a huge issue for them if they need to send those patients home, and a huge issue again on the risk side if they want to go ahead and see those patients and take a guess at what meds they might be on or what their problems might have been from previous visits. So they came to us and said, look, can you build us something so we can at least see our patient information when that system is unavailable, so that we've got a way to know what their issues were and get that information without having that paper chart floating around. And that's how Carefinity came about. Next slide. So business continuity, as you see at the top bubble here, is part of our care connectivity platform, and really everything about this platform is to make sure that the right information is being provided to the right person at the right time and place. So this includes our business continuity solution, our interface engine to get data back and forth between systems, our data conversion systems, so when we're merging and extracting from practices, our hosting solution, and our mobile access as well. So again, to make sure that information is going to the right place. Today we're going to talk about the Carefinity solution, so we can go to that next. So essentially what this does is allows you to view your patient charts, all the information that's in there about that patient, from any of your devices, whether it's a smart device or any computer you're using within the office. We've designed it so that it's very simple to use, so that since it's not an application that providers are in 100% of the time, it's a downtime solution, so that it's easy enough so that if someone hasn't been into it for a couple months, they can get through it and find what they need to do and go ahead about what they need to do with their visits. So it basically addresses issues you might have with your on-site data center, remote locations. If you're hosted and your internet connectivity is an issue for you, this will actually provide solutions for all those scenarios. And by the way, it is an on all the time solution. So even though the EHR may be up, you can still use this application to go ahead and look through and find your patient information. Next slide there. So just to take a look a little bit at the 5,000-foot view about how this is configured, if we take a look at just the top box above the main clinic location. So here we've got a clinic represented. They've got an EHR system. We've got Carefinity installed at that location as well. And if you'll notice, data is copied from that EHR to the Carefinity application every 15 to 30 minutes. So the Carefinity application has an updated copy of that patient information. If for some reason the EHR is no longer available to the users because of planned or unplanned downtime, the users can connect into Carefinity and access all their information. If we look at the bottom box, we can also have that Carefinity installation hosted at a data center. So if your concern is about the physical location for that main clinic location, it makes sense to have that hosted elsewhere so that if something does happen with that location, I've still got access to those systems. And the next slide will show us how it might be configured if I've got multiple remote locations. So we'll see at the top again, I still have Carefinity installed at my main clinic location, but across the bottom I've got 3 remote clinic locations. The first 2 have a Carefinity installation set up so that those users can look at their local copies of that information if their connection to the main clinic location is down. The remote clinic location number 3 doesn't have a Carefinity installation there, but still can access those records by connecting into either the other Carefinity installations at remote location 1 or 2. You'll also notice that the copy takes place between Carefinity at remote location number 2 and location number 1, and that prevents undue overhead against the EHR. So copies are taken from other copies so that we're not taking bandwidth from the EHR system. So that's kind of the 5,000-foot view, and I'll turn it over to Vic at this point to walk through the application and how it works.
Thanks, Joe. So what I'm going to show you this afternoon is the user interface to accessing this data. So in the event that there's an outage or it's a planned downtime and you need to get in and view this clinical information, you're going to do this through the Carefinity application. It is a browser-based application, so it's available to you through a browser window. And it comes in 2 different flavors, a desktop version and a mobile version for use with things like iPads and iPhones or Android phones to be able to get in and look at this information. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to log in with my username and password. And when I do that, it takes me to my home screen, which is my appointment listing for the day. Just a couple of things to point out here. In the top left corner of the screen, you'll see a last sync time along with a date and timestamp. So this tells your users how fresh the data is that they're looking at. As Joe talked about a little earlier, based on how Carefinity is configured, this sync is occurring between every 15 to 30 minutes and will change itself throughout the day. If an outage occurs and the Carefinity system is no longer able to sync information out of the EHR database, this timestamp becomes stagnant. So this is an indication to your users of when the last sync was completed and how fresh the data is that they're looking at. For the appointment book itself, you have the ability to search appointments for multiple providers if that's appropriate, as well as for multiple dates. So by default, we bring over all of the appointment information into Carefinity so you can go out and look at the schedule in the future. So if your front desk wants to try to make appointments for patients as they're leaving, they have some information about what that schedule looks like 3 weeks from now, for example. Excuse me. On the appointment book itself, you get a listing of all your patient appointments for the day. You get the time of the appointment, the patient's name, the subject of the appointment, the reason that they're coming in, as well as any status information that's captured for that appointment. You can open up a patient appointment by clicking on the patient icon, and that takes you into what we call our patient dashboard. At the top of the page, you get some summary demographic information about this patient, their name, their address, their medical record number, gender, date of birth, and age, as well as their contact information. And then we give you summary clinical data. So the dashboard itself shows you the patient's problem history, their allergy history, their medication history, as well as their visits, labs, and order history. And the way we do this is we show you the 5 most recent, chronologically descending. So the top of the list is going to be the most recent clinical information you have on this patient. If a particular section has less than 5 entries, you'll notice that we show everything here. And if it's more than 5, you get this more icon on the bottom right-hand corner that lets you dig in and look at more information. Additionally, when I open this patient, a navigation opened on the left-hand side here under the patient's name that allows me to go through all the different elements of the Carefinity chart that we have available for this patient. I can navigate from the left-hand side here or from the More icon as appropriate. So again, as we talked about a little earlier, the intent here is to make it as intuitive as possible. So your providers that may not have used Carefinity in a week or so won't have to spend a long time relearning the system when they need to access it again. I'm going to click on the problem icon here and go into the problem list. The problem list will show me the patient's problem list, again chronologically descending. This is a common theme you're going to see in all the screens that we go into, that the most recent information is going to be available at the top, so providers can quickly see that if they're seeing this patient during an outage and be able to get to the information that they're interested in. We give you the visit date, the onset date of the problem, the condition, its current status, the coding system. So my test data here is all ICD-9, but as you've started using ICD-10 and capturing 10 codes, that'll be available as well. As well as the diagnosed date, whether this problem has been resolved or not, and who's the provider who captured it. For allergies, we provide you again with a list of the patient's active allergies, the visit date, the onset date, the resolved date if it's been captured, the ingredient or allergen that the patient is allergic to, a brand name if there is one associated with it, the reaction that the patient has, and then who's the provider, again, who captured this information in the system. The patient's medication list will show you their complete medication history. Practices can configure Carefinity to either display the active medication list or the entire medication list. In this case, I've decided to display the entire medication list. If we recall, when we were on the dashboard for this patient, we had a single entry under medications, and that's because the dashboard shows me only the active med list for the patient. When I go into the details, I'm able to see the entire medication list for the patient. Again, I get the date of the medication, the med itself and the dose, the route, the quantity refills, a stop date if it's captured, and the provider who prescribed that medication. The visit history allows me to look at when this patient has been into my clinic and what they've been here for. I get it chronologically descending, so their last visit will be at the top of the list. You'll see who they saw at that visit, the location that visit was performed at, and the type and details from that visit if it's been captured in the system. My lab history here is my first view that's not a standard grid as we saw with the other ones. And what we do here is we give you a list of the unique panels that a patient has had. You'll see that on the left-hand side here, along with a count of the number of times they've had that particular panel. So for example, if I click on the TSH, I can see that they've done 6 of them. And when I click on that, I see the results on the right-hand side. Again, chronologically descending with the most recent information at the left. So I can quickly look and see what this patient's TSH history was like. And also I can click on a lab result to get more information about it. So when I click on here, I'm going to see any comments that are associated with that lab result, the units and reference ranges if they're captured, as well as whether this is a signed off result or not. The orders screen allows me to look at orders for a patient, and this particular test patient doesn't have any, so let's go grab a patient that does. To do that, I'm going to go up to the patient search here on my navigation window, and what this does is it allows me to search through the Carefinity database. As Joe talked about a little earlier, depending on how you configure Carefinity, the database might be the entire patient population of your practice, or it might be a subset of patients that belong to a particular location, because this is a location-specific Carefinity install. In either case, when I search here, I'm searching through the local patient database available to Carefinity. And I can search by typing in a couple of letters of the last name, a letter of the first name, whatever makes sense for your users, and then it's going to go out and find me all the patients that match that criteria. I can then open the patient by clicking on the patient icon, as I did before from the appointment book. And again, once again, it takes me to the patient dashboard. I'm going to go over here to the orders section, and I'm going to see orders on this patient. What we do with the orders is we break them up into the type of order. So you're going to see a unique list of order types on the left-hand side here. So in this case, diagnostic studies, exams, immunizations, labs, and PPDs. And I can look at all my orders as defaulted in, or I can go to a specific area if I want to see only, for example, the diagnostic studies. And what I'm going to get is the visit date, the order type, the description, the status, and who captured that order in the system when that data is captured on entry. What this allows you to do is to be able to look at active orders for a patient or recently completed orders and make sure that those results haven't been missed, or if the patient hasn't had the testing done, to be able to discuss that with the patient and make sure that testing is completed. The Document tab allows me to look at all my notes within the system. This is again chronologically descending, so that most recent note is going to be at the top of the list. This is what we found providers want to see most often when they're doing a patient visit. When they don't have access to the EHR, they want to review that last visit note to see what happened in the previous visit. And that's going to be at the top of the list here. I can click on the icon to view the note, and when I do that, it will open up the visit note itself. What we do here is we convert everything into a PDF so that the device that you're accessing Carefinity from needs only support PDF, which most devices do. So whether it's a desktop version or a mobile version, as long as it has access to a PDF browser, you'll be able to view these notes in there. I can scroll down and read the entire note, or if appropriate, I could print the note out if I needed to do that. Once I'm done with the note, I can click the back button here to go back if I wanted to look at another note, or I could continue navigating through the Carefinity chart to look at additional information. The next section, Images, allows me to access all my scan data in the EHR. And we do this by the document type. So you'll see a listing of all the document types that the user has available for this particular patient, and I can click in on a document type and see all those documents here. I can click on View, and I can view that document. Once again, we're converting that image to a PDF, so that as long as my device supports PDFs, I can go in and view that EKG, for example, in this case. Once again, if appropriate, I could print that out if I needed to do whatever I needed to with that information. The next section here on the patient's Carefinity chart are vital signs, and this patient doesn't have any, so let's jump into our search again, and we're going to go grab a patient that does. Again, opening up that patient brings me to my patient dashboard, and I'm going to go into the vitals section. The vitals is a grid chronologically descending, so the most recent vitals information will be at the top of the grid. We're going to give you the date the vitals were taken, the patient's height and weight, their pulse, their BP, their BMI, as well as their temperature, their respirations, and their pulse ox, and a head circumference if it's captured. Additionally, we give you access to growth charts from within Carefinity. So for our pediatricians that are out there, one of the common feedback that we got is that a lot of their visits, I should say not most, are well-child visits. So in the event of an outage, the growth chart is a pretty important component for that well-child visit, and the ability to generate that from the system was something that they wanted. So what this allows you to do is to generate those growth charts right from Carefinity. So if I click on the growth chart button, it's going to ask me for which type of chart I want to look at based on the patient's age and gender. And I can select the growth chart that I want to view. And when I do that, it's going to generate that growth chart for me based on the vitals information that's in the system. One of the nice things that we do here is we provide a list of all the growth chart, or sorry, all the vital values here, so that you can print this out and give it to the patient, or the parent, I should say, and they have that information available to them. You can print it out right from this view by clicking on the print button. You can also zoom in if you want to discuss with the patient anything in particular. You can zoom into the information available there. I can close the growth chart and go back to my Carefinity screen. The last section that we have available is our note, and this is the only part of Carefinity that you can enter information into. Everything that we've looked at so far is read-only, meaning it's reference information from your EHR. But with the Add Note feature, you have the ability to go in and add a note that can get pushed back into the EHR when connectivity is restored. I give the note a title, as well as a provider and a document type to associate it with. I can then go in and type all the information that I need to into that note, and I can save that note, and when connectivity is restored, that note would become available in your EHR system for you to view. Those are the components of the Carefinity chart at a patient level. The other thing that we provide you is the ability to create your own views of the data using reporting. So if I click on the report icon here, I can go to, and for information that you may need that's beyond the scope of what we provide in Carefinity, we give you the ability to sort of customize your view and expand your view through the use of crystal reports. So the users can tie in any crystal report that they generate, and they can come in here and launch those crystal reports and view the results in here, again, as a PDF so that they can print them out and have them available for their users. In this case, this is a patient label that we created for a practice that wanted to be able to still print labels in the event of an outage so they can continue their normal workflow in terms of dealing with that patient when they presented in the clinic. So we've done reports for things like vaccination histories, for Coumadin, reports for Coumadin clinics so people can look at their Coumadin history and so on and so forth. So this gives you a powerful mechanism to be able to expand information and have it available there as well. The last two sections that I'm going to talk about here are more user-centric, and those are what we call our sign-off queue and our task list. And these are basically your provider notifications. So those notifications, if they require a sign-off, are going to go into your sign-off queue. So things like documents and lab information are going to be available here. And I can click on it and view the lab history over here on the right-hand side if I wanted to view what came in on that particular sign-off. I can also open the patient and go into the patient's Carefinity chart also, and then I can go in and look at the lab history, for example, and compare results from previous labs and see if there's anything that we need to take advantage of, or if we need to call the patient in and have them come in because there's a abnormal result or something that needs to be dealt with. The idea here is that if an emergent issue came into the physician review bin before connectivity was lost, that's not sitting there waiting for connectivity to be restored before someone can take action on it. The task list would be your remaining notifications. Things that don't fall into that document and lab category would be available here. Again, this is reference information for your users so that they know that something came in and they can take advantage and deal with that information that's come in. Maybe they capture a note in Carefinity that says what they did in dealing with that issue, and then they update that note back into the EHR system. So that's the components of Carefinity. Again, try to make it as intuitive as possible so that users can find what they need to, even if they haven't used the system in a little while. What I'm going to show you here real quick is the mobile view, or the access that you would get to the data from a handheld device like a tablet or a phone or something of that nature. So bear with me 1 second while I trick my computer into thinking that it's a tablet. Okay, so I'm going to refresh my screen, and I'm going to change the size of my window a little bit. And when I do that, it's going to give me a slightly different look. This is my mobile view of the data. So again, think about coming in from an iPad or a iPhone or an Android device and what you might be looking at on there. I'm going to log in again, just like I did onto the regular desktop version. And when I do that, it takes me to my appointment listing just like it did before. I've got the patient schedule up here. I can go in and search other providers as I could before. I can go in and look at different dates if I wanted to see what the schedule looked like at different dates from my mobile version. And then I can open up that patient from here as well. You'll notice that the patient dashboard looks a little bit different on the mobile. We still have that demographic header up top that gives you the patient's name, gender, address information, their contact information. One difference here on the mobile is that this is collapsible, so that I can collapse that and use more of my real estate to view data that I want to look at. And the other difference that you'll notice here is that we don't give you the summary information on the mobile view. You're going to have to look at the data that you're after by clicking on the category and drilling into it. Again, for real estate purposes, we didn't want the users to have to spend a great deal of time scrolling, so they can go in and access the information that they're interested in getting to. So for example, if I wanted to look at those lab results, I could click on the labs, and it gives me the same list of lab panels that I saw in the desktop version. And I can go in and click on a particular panel, and I see those results here. Again, here are my 6 TSHs, chronologically descending with the most recent result on the left-hand side. And again, as before, if I want to go in, I can click on it and look at any of the comments that are associated with that lab result, or be able to go in and look at whether are there any reference ranges or things like that for that lab result. I can jump back into my dashboard and go look at other sections that I find appropriate. And I can even capture notes from here or look at those growth charts from here if I wanted to. So if I go into my notes section, I can go in and capture that note right from my mobile device. You could certainly use your speech to text that most of the mobile devices support, and go in and capture that information, and that note would get pushed back into your EHR when connectivity is restored. If you're using this when connectivity is available, it'll push back in during the next sync cycle and be available there as well. So anything that you could do from the desktop version, you can do from here as well on the mobile. So I can go in and search my patient population, and let's pull up that patient that had vitals so we can see what that looks like. I can go down to my vitals section, and here is that vitals list for that patient. And just as with the desktop version, I can go in and I could generate a growth chart if I wanted to, and I have that growth chart available on my mobile screen. So I can discuss it with the patient. I can deal with it as I need to, as I see appropriate with that information. So it gives you another opportunity to extend access to this information to providers where they can really use it and have it available to them. It is an option that the clinic will decide as to whether they want to allow access to the mobile from the outside world. The way Carefinity has been designed is using similar design concepts that are used in the banking industry. It's called OWASP, which prescribes the type of security that needs to be available that's above and beyond the HIPAA required mandates for things like hack attempts and that sort of stuff. And it's been built to those specifications as well. So we do have a number of users that do expose this to the outside world, so providers can access it very quickly. And some of our providers really like to use it for things like answering call when they're at home or outside the clinic, where it's they can get into it very quickly and access information pretty quickly from the system. So that's the Carefinity front end, so both the desktop and the mobile version. And Nancy, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll switch this back over here, and we will get into our questions. We really appreciate that demonstration and the information about Carefinity. We've got some questions coming in, and if you do have any other questions you want to get into us, do that in the next few minutes and we will get to them. I'll start here at the beginning. First question came in. It's about locations. I have 10 locations. Do I need to have Carefinity installed at each location, or can I just install it at some locations?
This is Joe. I can take that question.
Okay, Joe.
So as I showed on the one graphic where we had multiple locations, you don't necessarily need to install Carefinity at each location. You certainly can. but in order to save some cost and to make it the best configuration for you, what we would do is work with you to determine which locations made the most sense to have a Carefinity installation set up. Often it's those locations that have a large patient population, see a lot of appointments, see a lot of patients coming through on a daily basis, while those that may see just a few don't necessarily need an installation there. And again, those other installations or other locations that don't have an installation can still connect in using any of the other Carefinity installations that exist out there.
Okay, great. Now this next question I'm sure is going to be of increasing concern to a lot of practices. This one asks, our major concern is that we're hosted and we worry about our internet connection to the hosted system. Will this solution address that issue?
This is Joe again, and that's exactly one of the scenarios that this has been designed for. So since you've got a local copy of Carefinity running at your location, if your internet connection goes down to the hosting center, you've still got access to that local copy of your patient charts. So that's exactly the scenario that this is put together for and works great for.
Okay, great. That would be very reassuring. Another question here. I understand that I can create notes or eNote in Carefinity. Can they use a form or a template document for providers instead of just a blank document?
I can address that, Joe. This is Vic.
Okay.
Our latest release of Carefinity supports the concept of PDF forms. So these forms allow you to capture data in a predefined format. So if you've done any government forms online where you go into a PDF and you're able to fill in information into boxes and capture that data that way, we do support that. So you can create generic form templates for different visit types, for maybe for a well child visit and your regular progress note, a SOAP form or something of that nature. And then you can go in and guide the user through those different areas of the form that they need to capture information in, and then we generate a PDF from that and push that PDF back into the EHR when connectivity is restored.
Okay, I'm sure that will be of increasing concern too as more and more documents become templated. Next question, what's the overhead on the EHR system when the copying is going on? So what kind of demand is there on the system?
So as we talked about through the presentation, the time of the sync we mentioned a couple of times anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, and the reason we give you kind of that range is the way our sync utility works is it meters itself as it's looking for new information on the EHR system, so that if it finds a whole bunch of data, for example, in a particular category, it doesn't go out and grab 100,000 records at one time. It meters itself, it grabs the data in small quantities so that it's not overloading your system. At the end of the day, we're basically putting on the overhead of another instance of the EHR running in terms of the load that we're placing on the server. Now what that does mean is that it does change the frequency of the sync. It's not hard-coded to say it's going to happen every 20 minutes or every 30 minutes. It may take a little bit longer in certain instances because there was a larger amount of data put in at that time than another time during the day. But that's a really critical component for us to make sure that we don't have a great business continuity solution, but then we're bringing down your production environment trying to get that data over. We want to make sure that production isn't affected and that we're getting the data as frequently as we can while keeping that in mind.
Okay. A question here about printing. Can anything be printed out of Carefinity?
So as we looked at when we went through the demonstration, the documents and the images can all be printed from Carefinity. The grids themselves don't have a native print function, although we do have users that print screen the actual browser window and are able to print that out, but it's not a formatted print. It's just basically printing what you're seeing on screen. We do have users that have created specific reports for printing, so they have some scenarios where they actually will go in and generate a report in the event of an outage and make that report available to the provider which is certainly a reasonable option as well. So at the end of the day, the documents, the images, and the reports can all be printed out. And the remaining parts of the application, you certainly can print your browser window and have that available, but it's not a formatted report that comes out.
Okay, and now here's another question, probably tags along on the one before. If the providers want something that's not displayed in the current version, can something new be added?
Yep, and that's exactly why we have that report section in there, is to deal with those requirements, so that if there is certain pieces of data that clinics need, they're able to generate that through a report and make that visible. Additionally, this is our third major release of the product, and multiple minor releases throughout the year. We try to do a major release every 18 months or so, and then minor releases follow in between. And so we're always taking enhancement requests from our users to try to put that functionality within the system. So a good example of that are the growth charts that I talked about, which are new to this version 3.0 of our software, based on feedback that we got from our users, that this is something that they would like to see and have that capability in the system. Prior to that, we were asking users to do it through reports, through Crystal reports, which weren't the neatest way to do growth charts and to deal with that, but now we have that functionality built right in. So yeah, between the reporting and the ability to submit enhancement requests, we try to cover as much as we can.
Okay. A final question here. It's asking about disaster recovery programs. If they have one, they're doing backup to data to the cloud. Isn't that sufficient? Is that good enough?
Yeah, this is Joe. I can jump in here on that. So it sounds like they're asking, they're backing up data to the cloud. So if that's what they're doing is backing up data to the cloud, that's great to have a backup copy in the cloud, but there's still going to be an amount of time if something happens to their system to bring that system back online. Even if they're doing something like a hot site, there's still an amount of time that it takes to switch over to that hot site. And basically, you pay more to decrease that amount of time. So with Carefinity, this allows you to, as soon as there's a downtime, again, because it's an always-on situation application, you've got access immediately if you lose your connectivity to your EHR. So this allows you to go ahead and see patients that are already in the office. You don't have to worry about, is it going to be 2 hours to get my system back up, or 4 hours, or a day. I've got access to those charts right away. And it also allows you to spend a little bit less on that disaster recovery or that hot site solution. So again, the more you pay on that disaster recovery, it shortens your time to have that system back up. So by having Carefinity in place, it allows you to spend a little bit less of your budget on and shortening that time frame for that hot site to come back online. So Carefinity actually is part of a full disaster recovery solution, but it's the business continuity part, and by just having a backup in the cloud doesn't really do it for you. You need this piece as well.
Okay, a question came in. This may be specific though to a given user, but updates, are they an additional charge as the updates come along, or are they part of the program that you sign up for?
They are part, so once you come on board, you get all the new releases. There's no additional charge for that.
Oh, great. I'm sure that's good news. So that's all the questions that I see coming in. So it looks like anything else that people have, they will be contacting you directly, but we want to thank you very much, Joe Cernak and Vic Shishadri, for a really fascinating webinar. We also want to thank all of you for your time and your attention. And if you would like to learn more, if you'd like to schedule an exploratory call or product demonstration, you can call Christine Piper there at the phone number, or contact her at the email that you see on your screen. Give you a second to take a look at that. And we again want to say thank you very much for all your time and for your attention today from all of us. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.